Wolfpack, what's going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Roto Street, rotostreetjournal.com. We breed and feed fantasy wolves here with your Week 11 injury and Week 12 waiver wire recap and analysis, giving you all the major news you have to track for who's going to be in and out looking forward, and then also the waiver wire pickups that you need to look for in their absence, getting you ahead of the pack right now. And to be honest, I'll just come out and say it. This week is a disgusting week for waiver wires. It's hideous. It's nasty. I know Monday Night Football is about to kick off, so I'll try to get through this as quickly as I can. But before the action starts, I will just chuck out there a couple names I always like to look at before the games kick off, especially in like Yahoo and different leagues where you can pick up players. If you have some bench trash you want to get rid of, well, why not stash Cam Akers right now? Only 29% owned, saw 10 carries, a team-high carry total last week. He could be an interesting name to pick up, see what happens tonight. We're seeing these post-buy rookie bumps with Swift. Dobbins this week wasn't post-buy, but just kind of coming out of nowhere. Who knows if Swift could be the next rookie to get that big bump. He played the fewest of the snaps last week, yes, but he also saw the most carries. Henderson seems to be taking a back seat. Malcolm Brown, yeah, he's the vulture there too. So ultimately, is it ever going to be that valuable? Probably not. I'm not saying cut anything great, but if you, again, have trash, you're going to be cutting anyways, or an injured player on your bench who we cover in a few, Cam Akers could be a worthwhile stash, or somehow out there in a lot more leagues than I expected, only 13% owned right now, is Josh Reynolds. He ran more routes this last time out there. Josh Reynolds, 37 routes than Cooper Kupp, than Robert Woods, who only had 35. Kupp had 29. Played the vast majority of the snaps, led the team in receiving yards, targets, and receptions. 8 catches, 94 yards on 10 targets. Has that big, long body. He's kind of playing into it right now. Has actually more targets than Robert Woods since the start of week 4. And again, only 13% owned right now, Josh Reynolds. So another name to chuck out there before Monday Night Football for your waiver wires, because I know we're about to kick off. I want to give that actionable advice right at the top. If you have questions, though, get them on, and especially for Monday night, I'll look at the top for those. If you don't mind giving this a like or share, even better, to help us get out there more, show your appreciation. It means the world to us. And if you're catching the replay, thanks so much. We greatly appreciate subscriptions on YouTube. Put on that bell so you know when we're going live. Get those questions on in, Wolfpack. Let me know how I can help you. But I'm going to now cover all the injury news, starting with the most devastating storyline of the day, of the season, really. Joe Burrow, just disgusting. Not even just an ACL tear. I should correct that, because it's an ACL, it's an MCL. There's more internal damage. Brutal loss. And just for the fan point of view, I'm not a Bengals fan, could care less about their team, but ultimately, as a football fan, you hate to see a rookie that was on pace for records, just dominating the game, looking so strong from the offset, now having an injury that can and likely will linger into next year, they're saying, because of how much extra damage was done to that knee. Man, it's horrible. You hope for a speedy recovery. You hope to see him next year, but you also imagine they'll take their time and make sure they get this guy right. And you just hope you come back, he comes back and it's the same Joe Burrow. I think he will. Competitive guy, just that drive, that elite mentality that he's going to plow right through this. So I have faith in him. I'm confident that he will be bouncing back better than ever at some point next year. But you really just never know with an injury that was as gross and disgusting as that, and the extensive damage is brutal. Now, of course, the rest of the season implications fantasy-wise, it crushes T. Higgins. I mean, so many of those balls that he was catching were so chemistry-dependent, timing routes, putting the ball only where T can get it. Just brutal to see that rookie connection get cut short, because I love T. Higgins. I love what he's doing, but you can't ever expect him to put up these same type of numbers with Ryan Finley throwing him the ball. God, come on. Disgusting. The same idea with Tyler Boyd, although more of his game's about separating smooth routes, run after the catch. So I doubt he'll be quite as impacted as a guy like T, but still certainly takes a significant downgrade on an offense that was leading the league in pass attempts, moving with a good pace. You can't imagine any of that to proceed the same way. We ought to have Joe Mixon on IR. So Gio Bernard, feature back behind a Ryan fucking Finley offense. Who gives a shit? It's just none of these guys are going to be starts for me, maybe in the most generous of matchups, but probably not the rest of the season. So, of course, crushing on the real life perspective, you hope for a speedy recovery for Joe Burrow. Definitely more important than any fantasy implications, but the fantasy implications are also extremely negative with no real backup there to Burrow that can sustain and keep these boats afloat. Moving on now. The Ravens running backs, J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram, both tested positive today for COVID-19. Obviously, huge implications. And of course, right as Dobbins starts his fucking takeover, we get him just immediately taken away from us. It's just like Swift has this huge day, blows up, plays over 70% of the snaps. Seems like it's ready on the precipice of that breakout, going crazy the rest of the season, and bam, we're probably going to lose him this week because the Ravens do play on the Thursday night. That most likely means there's not going to be enough time for multiple tests, all the contact tracing. I'm not a scientist doctor. I have no idea exactly how it will play out. But ultimately, you should expect J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram to be out on a short week. I don't think there's enough time for them to be cleared. And again, it sucks because Dobbins had 15 carries, 70 yards, and a touchdown, 2 receptions for 15 yards. But more importantly, 64% of the snaps, 67% of the short down and distance, 100% of 2-minute drills. So like every down and distance of value, the goal line, the short, all that good stuff, the receiving work. He was in for all of it. Would have to be, as soon as he's back, J.K. Dobbins, right back into the quality RB2 conversation, should he see that similar role. And it definitely seemed like that's something to expect moving forward. But in the meantime, without him, without Mark Ingram, it's probably going to be the Gus Edwards show, right? Who else could it be? Not probably. It is going to be the Gus Bus show. And Gus Bus, just nothing flashy or sexy about this guy. But when he gets work, he just churns. And it's a tough matchup coming up. Pittsburgh is one of the toughest Ds you can possibly go against. But Gus Edwards had 87 yards and a TD and 15 fantasy points against these guys on 16 carries with all the other people around him still there. I think Mark Ingram was actually dinged up that game. But now you get Ingram and Dobbins out. You're looking at probably 20-ish carries, the second run heaviest team in the league right now. 20 carries. I think another 80-yard TD day, 15 or so fantasy point day is well within Gus Edwards' reach. He was the running back 14 that week. I bet you would get another top 20 running back finish. And a lot of people dropping him, and deservedly so. 1 fantasy point this week against Tennessee. Like, there was no expectation for Gus Edwards to come back into volume, but ultimately with 2 of the guys in front of him out, I think Gus Edwards, if I'm bidding waiver wire fab, I would say a nice 15, 20% if you need a streamer. You're not going to have much rest of season value after this week, but if you're desperate, and we're at week 12 here, people, like if you need a running back and you need to get in that playoff push, you gotta whip it out. Like that's all you got here. So Gus Edwards, very, very streamable. Let's hope for a speedy recovery, or hopefully they don't have it at all for J.K. Dobbins, so he can get right back to that running back 2 takeover we were witnessing. Also on the COVID list, Adam Thielen. Oh, man, fresh off 120 yards, 2 TDs, just a monster effort against the Cowboys. Hopefully he doesn't have it. This is just contact tracing because he was all over the field, all over everybody because of how good this motherfucker was playing on Sunday. 89% of the snaps against the Cowboys, toasting these guys. And it would be devastating to see this guy off as the hot streak he's on. He's got 4 touchdowns across his last 2 games. He's been dominating just that goal line work all year. It's a tough loss, very tough loss for fantasy owners. And it's not like an immediate step-in replacement on this Vikings roster because of how run-heavy they are. Jefferson would obviously get a nice uptick in targets, but are you really looking like Olabisi Johnson? No. So we have a ton of waiver wire receivers we're going to cover later. Plenty of them low-owned, so they should be in there. So if you're looking for a desperation plug-in or a guy to have as a backup in case Thielen doesn't play against the Panthers, who have allowed the 6th most receptions to wide receivers this season, then we got some options for you later. So stay tuned in, folks, and we'll be sure to get to all those guys. Julio Jones, tight hamstring in week 11, plays very limited snaps throughout the game. And we saw the huge effect that has on the entire offense, in particular, Matt Ryan. Roto World citing this one. He's quarterback 27, 23, and 26, and 3 games that Jones has been absent or limited. And that was earlier in the year. This is the 4th time. He put up 7 fantasy points this week. So I bet that's even worse, or even fewer points. Probably quarterback 30 this last fucking week. Useless. So Matt Ryan, immediate humongous downgrade until Julio's back. It could be this week. There's no word yet what it is. Ridley might see an uptick in targets, but again, we saw the quality of everything in that offense go down without Julio's commanding presence. So something to definitely track if you're a Julio owner or you're invested in this offense at all. The amount of steps back they take without him is just astronomical. Juju Smith-Schuster, not an overly crazy injury. He exited early, but he also didn't return because they were blowing out the pathetic Jaguars. So ultimately, they expect he would have returned, is the early report so far. He had 4 catches, 19 yards on 5 targets before leaving about halftime. It was a pretty decent limp the way he was going off the field. So this might be something they rest him a week, early, the short week on Thursday night, which means just more targets for Deontay, for Claypool, who are really the two that I would have wanted to own anyways, the way the season's going. But just something to monitor with a short week coming up. You might be without Juju. So make sure you have your backup plans, maybe James Washington. I like a lot of the guys we're going to cite on the waiver wire list a bit more than Juju, but just wanted to toss those names there. Last 3 injuries, and then we'll get right to the waiver wire names for you folks. Michael Pittman, high ankle sprain. Yay. More Frank Gore. Nothing like watching a geriatric running back get fed 75 fucking times a game. Just disgusting. And now it makes sense why, at least. At some point on Sundays, it was just like, what the fuck is Frank Gore getting fed for? Where is P. Ryan? But now it makes sense. There's a high ankle sprain that's generally sidelines people for 2, 3, depending on the severity, maybe the rest of the season for P. Ryan. Ultimately, Gore played 35 of the 43 snaps, so a dominant, 80% share. 43 snaps in general is just pathetic and reflects how bad this offense is. But had a decent freaking day, which I hate to say, because are you ever really going to put Frank Gore in your lineups? Probably not, but he's only 10% owned. He rushed 15 times for 61 yards, scored a touchdown, had 2 receptions for 10 additional yards. So if you're getting 17 touches from your running back, I mean, as gross as that might be, even if he's 70 years old, Frank Gore still has value. I can't believe I'm saying it, on the Jets nonetheless. But he has also the Dolphins coming up. Juicy matchup there for him. Not a bad schedule. You got Seattle, Las Vegas, the 5th most points, Seattle, the 12th most points. So he could find some good use here, carrying people that are desperate, injured running backs, whatever it might be, potentially to 10-point days carrying. I'm not going to title, so fuck that. But 10 points from your running back off the waiver wire. Gore could be mildly usable here. I wouldn't spend more than $5 to get this guy, though, on budgets. Definitely a terrifying, awful looking injury. Rex Burkhead went down. They wouldn't even show the replay on the broadcast with how bad it was. It's been confirmed since it's a torn ACL. I wonder if it's similar to Burrow's in the sense that there's more damage in there. But Patriots, players were so visibly upset because of Burkhead had really become just a versatile heartbeat of this team, was scoring plenty of looks, plenty of TDs. Just a good all-around jack of all trades type of guy. So ultimately, for fantasy purposes, this does make the backfield a little more predictable in the sense that, James White, 39 snaps in this absence after the Burkhead went down there. And James White had himself quite the day. We'll talk about him in the waiver wire pickups in a little bit. Damian Harris also gets a nice rest of season bump up, though, because of how much Rex Burkhead had that nose for the end zone. How many times have we seen Harris get vultured? So Burkhead, is awful as this is, and again, you never want to ever celebrate an injury. I totally get it. I'm not sitting here being like, yay, fantasy owners, we get some more clarity. But it does ultimately carry that implication that maybe Harris, that touchdown upside, we saw him rip one in this week. Maybe that goes up a bit. And this high-end RB2 could carve out maybe some low-end RB1 value. Now, we'll see how involved Sony Michel is. They activated him off the IR this week. This also creates a path for him to just somehow come in and be an obnoxious presence. But maybe we get a nice clear, Damian Harris early downs, James White moving forward, and that would be better for fantasy purposes to have that type of consistency and dependability. I'm sure Michelle will come in here and fucking ruin everything, though. And last injury was Greg Olsen rupturing his plantar fascia, probably career at this point. I can't imagine he's going to want to strap him up and go through whatever type of pain awaits him with this recovery. What an unbelievable career if he's made it. This is it. Love Olsen as a player. And I love him as an analyst. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for him in terms of fantasy purposes. We've seen Will Dissly do it before. I mean, 8 full games over 2 seasons. That's the rub, of course, is the injury concerns. And this was entering the year. So far, he's been limited. He hasn't looked great. He's been behind Olsen. So I'm not counting this year at all. But 8 full games entering this year for the first 2 seasons. Was top 12 in 6 of those 8 games, 75%. Averaged 13.5 fantasy points, which Mark Andrews last year was 13.8 for perspective. Tight end 5 prior to his injury last year. I mean, could he be the guy? Like now that he is the actual guy potentially moving forward? Given how bad tight end is, why not take a fucking stab with your bench picks? So maybe Will Dissly, amidst this awful injury for Greg Olsen, could come into some value. All righty, Wolfpack. Let's now turn our attention to the waiver wire. I'm just going to double check scan here. Do I have any light questions here so far? We'll bet you a t-shirt. AB scores the first TD. I like that, Van Deventer. You want to win your t-shirt, though. We have our contest to look forward to. But I didn't see any specific questions. I see some of my legends in the comment section, though, so I promise I will get to those. But first, let's cover these waiver wire guys. Should take about 10 minutes or so to rip through them. Some of them will be repeat names from the injuries, given how much that informs it. We talked about these guys, beat them to the punch. If Monday Night Football hasn't kicked off already, rewind to the top if you need the case. But not Cooper Kupp, Josh Reynolds, Cam Akers. If you have trash to cut, might as well stash them. Let's see what they do tonight. Let's see if there's, hopefully not any more injuries, but you never know. Even Gerald Everett, if something happened to Higbee, would be a guy everyone's sprinting to the waiver wire. So beat them to the punch if you can. Beat them to the punch. But let's get into the actual guys I love, starting with Michael Pittman. I really think he could be 2020's A.J. Brown. Just a beautiful, beautiful stretch run for this guy. And I think he could go completely berserk. He's 44% owned, and any savvy owners, he shouldn't be out there in your league. But you might as well check. He had 3 catches, 66 yards, and a score. So nothing crazy, especially volume-wise, only 3 targets. I mean, didn't love that. But third straight game with him leading the team in the highest snap count. Third straight week with a very, very usable fantasy line. And showing some juice after the catch. He's showing deep ability. There's a 30, the majority of it was a 45-yard catch and run of his day. So that was a great big play, just like A.J. Brown. The dude can go deep, just like A.J. Brown. He can make the contested grabs. There's so many parallels, and in particular is the schedule. You get Tennessee, Houston, the Raiders, Houston again across his next 4 games leading into the championship. Just like A.J. Brown, and maybe Phillip Rivers could be the Tannehill. Who knows? I doubt it. But just like A.J. Brown last year, the schedule's soft, the talent's real, the usage is somewhat there. It's not great. It's not lovely, but the snaps are there. He's on the field. So when he's going to get the looks, he's going to be there when they're throwing. I think the guy could go crazy with that schedule. Phillip Rivers clearly is liking him, and they're building that nice rapport. Don't be shocked if Michael Pittman's one of those guys that's on some of the highest championship roster rates come the end of the year. And if he's somehow still out there in your league, he's the only guy I really look at from this list, from week 11 or week 12 rather, waiver wire list, that has any significant I got to go get this guy. The only other one might be Sterling Shepard, 45% owned, and it's just so steady. I mean, since coming back from his injury, 18, 15, 12, 11 PPR points, and none of those matchups were great. Daniel Jones was sucking a huge one throughout all of it. And now you look at the cakewalk schedule coming up from there. Cincinnati, bottom 4 against receivers. Seattle, the worst team against receivers. Arizona, not a hard matchup, and certainly points will be needed. Cleveland, bottom 3 against wide receivers. Across his next 4 games, all juicy matchups. So for a guy that's already getting it done, you already got a double-digit floor. He's seen 8, 10, 8, and 6 targets. Unbelievable, just consistent, steady usage. 6, 8, 6, 6 catches. So huge reception rate. When you throw it to him, he's getting the ball, and he's making things happen. I love Sterling Shepard moving forward. Pittman's got the ceiling of these waiver wire pickups, but if you needed a floor guy, if you want someone that every week you put in, you're going to get 10, that's going to be Shepard. And the ceiling is pretty damn high with those matchups. He would definitely be the second highest priority on my waiver wire after Michael Pittman, above Gus Edwards as a streamer. Like both those wide receivers could have some very real rest of season value. But again, 45% I'm probably not out there. A guy who might be out there, only 20% owned right now, Nelson Aguilar. It's been a roller coaster. No one's going to argue that. It's really difficult to know when can I get Nelson Aguilar into my lineup. I can't pretend to have this crystal ball when it's going to work out and when it's not, but I will say it's worked out more often than it hasn't in the last 6 weeks. 14, 15, 22, 0. This doesn't work out. That was the win day. Toss that one out. 14, 2, 21. So, I mean, if we toss out that wind, awful, ruined game, we've got 6 out of 7 games. He's been top 30, often, 2 games inside the top 15. Number 10 wide receiver this last week with 6 catches on 9 targets. Team, season ties it to season high. So that was encouraging to see the actual volume there. 88 yards and a TD, but a TD monster. Absolute TD monster. 5 touchdowns across his last 7 games. And you get Atlanta this week. Do you need me to spell that one out for you? I sure hope not if you've been playing fantasy at all this year. And then the Jets right after. I mean, did you see what Keenan Allen just did? Not that Aguilar will ever do anything close to what Keenan Allen has been in his career. But still, there is some actual upside to Nelson Aguilar, especially if you need just a 2-week plug-in. The schedule stiffens up with the Colts after that, but still, there is some upside for a guy that's been just far more often than not being a very productive person for your lineup. Who knows if he'll actually peg the right week, but 6 out of his last 7, other than the wind-blown terror and then 1 complete dud, have been very useful. So I think Nelson Aguilar could be a guy to look for on waiver wires. Moving forward here, Jalen Reagor. I did not make the thing for, but Jalen Reagor is only 25% owned. So Jalen Reagor, 4 or 5 targets, 52 yards, nothing to write home about, but he gets Seattle this week. Number 1 matchup for wide receivers. So you're looking for a streamer. Could be great. Anything tied to Carson Wentz right now blows, but Reagor blew the least, if that's any type of solace. I mean, Travis Fulgham had 1 catch. Greg Ward had 3 for 9 yards. Jeffrey, no catches. There's no wide receivers doing anything. Dallas Goedert had a nice day, but Reagor's the one receiver that's actually got some meaningful value right now. Could be interesting at only 28% owned right now. I still think, maybe I'm just doubling down on my take that this guy could blow up. Clearly he's not going to be like Odell, rookie season Odell, but he's got some juice. If Carson Wentz can ever get his head out of his fucking ass, then Jalen Reagor could be huge. Additionally interesting, Jets wide receivers, Brashad Perriman. He goes 54 yards and a score against the Chargers. 3rd touchdown in 2 weeks. Has that rapport with Flacco? Now, that's the question is, would this continue when we get Sam Darnold back? Who knows? I can't guarantee anything there. It's the Jets. But that rapport with Flacco is real. So as long as he's playing, I think Perriman's in streaming radar. He gets in the playoffs, just a complete joke. Seattle, week 14, most points as we've cited. Cleveland, week 16, the 3rd most. You got a brutal, meat to the sandwich. The Rams in week 15, you'll never use them there. And honestly, if you're in the playoffs, do you really ever need a jet? I don't think so. But Perriman did win people the most titles of anybody last year in the championships. Like over 30% of championships had him on their roster. So he's interesting to look at. And then Denzel Mims led the team in targets, 8 targets. Hauls in 3 of them for 71 yards. So not a great conversion rate on his targets, but a lot of big plays, 27, 25, 19 yards. So chunk play after chunk play. Also getting some defensive pass interferences. He's got that same soft schedule we just said for Perriman too. So I'd like to see what Mims does down this stretch. See if this big play guy can keep it going. Last wide receiver here. What do we make of Damiere Byrd? The biggest day of any of these guys. 6 catches on 7 targets, 132 yards and a score. But this is, let's call this one, to me, fantasy fool's gold, like Richie James a couple weeks ago. First time he's ever been over 100 yards in his career. This offense is so game flow, like the most game flow dependent. They got down to the Texans and had to chuck. But how often, on the wrong script of that, Bird might see 1 target, if anything. So I'm not going to go all in. We've seen Myers blow up. and then disappear for 3. It's just there's no consistency to anyone attached to a game that will run it all down the throat if they can. And then even when they throw, it's like, who's going to be the guy? Good luck figuring that out. If you have trash, why not stash him? See if this happens again. Him and Cam did play together a couple years back. It was a beautiful 42-yard touchdown too, over the shoulder. Breadbasket, loved it. But I'm not sprinting out to get Damiere Byrd in any leagues. Let's now move to running backs. And for running backs, we already covered this, but with Dobbins out, with Mark Ingram out, Gus Edwards is a smash stream top 20 running back play for those who need it. By far, the most usable immediate running back. There's certainly some interesting stashes and things of that nature, but this is really the only running back I think you could find on your waivers and plug in and get any type of usable value. And I think actually pretty good usable value. Had, again, 15 points against this daunting front seven of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he could do it right again. If he gets another 16 carries, which he got 16 carries last time when Dobbins was there, now there's going to be nobody in his way. So I think he could definitely go for 80-ish carries, touchdown, another 15 points. He's a bus. He's a steamroller. They call him the Gus bus for a reason. It's not pretty. The dude can also catch too. This week he's going to be an every down back, so that's like a nice little addition to his value that we don't typically get. Is he can catch. He's not like Alvin Kamara out there, but you should see about 3 to 4 targets. Hauls in 2 of them for another 15 yards. He had 31-yard reception last week. The guy can get it done. He can get it done. 15, 9, 9, 8. Like, that's on a 3-headed nightmare. He's been the most usable guy. So now when he's the only guy, I think Gus Edwards on the run-heaviest team could be a very viable streaming option. James White, if there's one other usable option besides Gus Edwards this week from the waiver wire, it'd be probably James White. We saw the Burkhead. We covered him earlier. That injury looked devastating. Torn ACL, definitely done for the year. In his stead, James White led the team in snaps by a pretty significant margin. We obviously saw Damian Harris, who's going to be the lead back whenever he's healthy. But he only played 26 snaps as compared to 39 for James White and 12 for Burkhead. So well over half the snaps for James White. And you saw he had 9 targets, hauled in 6 of them. Back to that steady presence there. Again, game script is going to always determine how these Patriots guys perform. But when they're down, James White's going to be a viable option. He's only 40% owned, 64 yards through the air this week. And I expect that role to stay expanded the rest of the season. Now, who knows what Sony Michel will be? He's 27% owned, and maybe you just stash him and see what happens here. Because Harris seems to get drilled like once a week. So if he goes down, then it's literally just James White and Sony the rest of the season. So let's see what Sony does. Maybe worth a stash. I'm not sprinting to get him, but James White certainly will have some more dependability than what we're typically used to from this Patriots backfield this season. And then the last 2, Carlos Hyde, obviously remind us the importance of cuffing season. Hopefully you got him in Thursday night. Shoot me a nice little whatever that emoji is if you did. Because Carlos Hyde crushed it, and we were all in on this guy. So pumped to see it. But Tony Pollard also scoring this week. He clearly is behind Zeke, 23 carries to 5. But if anything happens to him, it's just a reminder, Pollard is one of the best handcuffs in the game. So much juice when he runs the ball. Carlos Hyde was a great reminder. If you got the right handcuff, you're going to get 16 points in any week, and still out there in a lot of leagues with Carson often dinged up. So those guys are just reminders of your elite handcuffs. I mean, it's doubtful that Latavius Murray or any of them are sitting out there. But in case there are some handcuffs, just scoop them up, because it is getting to that point where depth doesn't matter when bye weeks are all done, and you just need the insurance policies. Jamal Williams is elite handcuff if he's somehow out there. I think he's about 60% on, so fat chance, but worth looking for if anybody dropped him. I'd say Donta Foreman, honestly, for Henry. Like, if you want an insurance plan for him, you don't usually need an insurance plan for a tank, but you might need one with him. We talked about this one, so I won't go into too much depth here. Frank Gore, 17 touches, scores a touchdown, 60 rushing yards, 10 through the air, just bleh, gross and useful. at the same time. Let's move on to quarterbacks, though. For those of you needing a Joe Burrow replacement plan, Derek Carr would be the top of my list, 36% owned. So he's the top of many people's waiver wire lists. But he dazzled this last night. 275 yards, 3 scores. His interception was on like a bomb Hail Mary at the end. You can't fault him for. He's looked really good this year. I mean, the stats haven't been like blow your mind. 19 touchdowns is okay for this point of the year, but the 3 interceptions, I mean, he's been so careful with the ball, rock steady as like an actual real-life quarterback, and he's had a few big days in light of it. And you look at the schedule, Atlanta, most points allowed to quarterbacks. Jets, 4th most. You get Indy. You're not going to use them against Indy. But then the Chargers the next week. That's 4 of your next 5 weeks left in the season. You got great matchups for Derek Carr. So I like him. If you need a Burrow replacement, I think you're getting 3 out of his next 4 games. Very usable numbers. So I like more likely to be out there for you is Phillip Rivers. 27% owned. Mildly useful these last few days. 288 yards and 3 scores, 1 pick. Not a bad day from Philly Rivers against a decent pass defense of the Packers here. And if I think, Michael Pittman, I hold him in as high regard as I do everybody else, then I got to think pretty similarly about Phillip Rivers, right? Loves the Dome, it seems. Gets Tennessee at home in the Dome this week. Bottom 7 against quarterbacks and just defense in general. And they're even more banged up than they have been. Perfect 1 week stopgap there. Unless you look and you see, oh, wait, he's got Houston the next week. Raiders the next week. And then Houston again. The Raiders is just probably an ugly game. I'll avoid that. But those Houston games could both be shootouts. Probably will be shootouts. Phillip Rivers could have a few more 3-touchdown days in his back pocket here. 308 yards the week before that. Complete dud against Baltimore, but Baltimore's a pretty good D. And right before that, 262 and 2 touchdowns, 22 fantasy points. The week before that, 371 and 3 touchdowns, 26 points, 26, 22, 8, 16, 22 over his last 5 games. I mean, he's probably top 10 quarterback with those stats, and the schedule is looking pretty juicy moving forward. If you're desperate for a quarterback, as gross as it is, Phillip Rivers could be your Burrow replacement plan. And last one, just if I could make you puke any further tonight, Daniel Jones is only 28% owned, but he 64 yards on the ground with a rushing score, a nice little Konami upside for Danny. Like that scrambling ability. This dude, 8 of his 10 matchups this year have been against bottom 20, like toughest 20 teams this year. Brutal. All red zone, the red matchups. Such a hard schedule. Just disgustingly. None were in the top 10 either. He didn't have one single easy matchup on his schedule. But now in these next 3 weeks, get Cincinnati, 7th most points to quarterbacks. Seattle, the 2nd most. Arizona, the 9th. All 3 in the green zone. The first 3 green zone games this guy has seen on his schedule. We've seen a couple 20-pointers against the Eagles. I think we could get some nice stretch run play out of Danny Jones for the quarterback desperate. Wouldn't be shocked to see Danny Jones be a viable fill-in for anybody that's really, really needy. And then everybody's favorite position, the tight end. Dalton Schultz, 21% owned. You see in volume. How about this Shepard? Volume is volume. 8 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets across his last 3. 11, 9, and 13 fantasy points, PPR leagues. Tight end 9, 15, and 10. That's not horrible. That's certainly usable. It's not great, but it's on. What's that meme? It's not much, but it's honest work. Like that's what we're seeing from Dalton Schultz right now. And he kind of looks like a farmer. So, I mean, that all fits for him. But Dalton Schultz, if you need to get tight end, he's going to get as many targets as just about any tight end in the league at this point. Jordan Reed, only 13. Why am I recommending fucking Jordan Reed? Last time I put that motherfucking asshole in, he got me 1 catch for 3 yards. Thanks, Jordan. Good old Jordy Reed. Why would I put him on here? I mean, he ran 22 pass routes compared to Dwelly's 18. Woo, 4 more pass routes. And he played 31 snaps, though, to 37 for Dwelly. Ugh. 5 targets, 62 yards. I mean, actually successful for tight ends. Yeah, I mean, they're going to get Deebo Samuel back soon. I don't think that Reed is ever worth using. I'll never personally trust him again, but I just want to tell you the stats. They weren't bad. Won't ever happen for me, though. We'll never, ever go back to this bag of fucking dirt, mulch pile, useless, steaming garbage. Never again. But hey, usable stats for those of you that might need him. I like Will Dissly, though. Will Dissly's a beast. He's a hog. And we gave you guys these stats earlier, but with Greg Olsen out, when we talked about his injury, Dissly played 8 full games before this year. I'm just going to repeat these stats, so bear with me if you already saw these. That's the concern, is the injuries, but now is the lead guy most likely. Could be Hollister, I could be wrong here, but Dissly, this could be the time he reemerges. Was the tight end 5 last year prior to his injury. Has finished top 12 in 6 of his 8 games prior to this year as a tight end. That consistency, 75% of games as a top 12 guy, you kidding me? I'd kill for that right now to my tight end. Averages 13.5 fantasy points over those 8 games that he played. Mark Andrews had 13.8 last year, and we were all crowning him like the man, the king, the god. Dissly's right there. We've already seen it. We just need this guy to be fully healthy and to get the work. I think this could be it. Not seeing him on a ton of waiver wire lists either. So he'd be like the sneaky play you won't really have to bid anything on, like 1% of your budget, $1 to get him. Stash him. See what he does. See what the disc does if you're hating your tight ends right now. And last but not least of the waiver pickups, and then on to your questions and comments, folks. Akins, 83 yards, career high. Had some injuries around him with Cobb, potentially an IR candidate, working that same middle area of the field. Jordan Akins has always been the preferred tight end here when he's healthy. And that played out this week. 31 snaps was by far the highest. Jaron Fells was 21 snaps. Pharaoh Brown, the blocking tight end, was in a bit, but not more than Akins. So I think Akins, we've talked about some of the games. They have some shootouts potentially brewing there for Houston. Now, 2 dates against Indy make it very less appealing because they're the best team by far against tight ends. But he's got a couple matchups that maybe worth stashing. If you miss out on Schultz, you miss out on Jordan fucking loser Reed, and maybe Dissly doesn't pan out. Akins could be a guy. That's how desperate we are, tight end folks. That's how desperate we are. All righty. And now, as always, let us bring you our lovely, lovely mailbag, folks. So what do we have from the Wolfpack tonight? I'm sure we've got some great comments. So bitching out, who knows? We got Aaron Van Deventer. Sup, Wolf, bet you a t-shirt AB scores the first TD. I don't think that already happened. I heard somebody in the other room screaming Robert Woods scored. So looks like I should have bet you that t-shirt. What would you give me for a t-shirt if I won the bet, though? Imagine Mixon will be shut down for the season. Right, no point. I think that's a really good point, Van Deventer. Is why rush this guy back if our season's already over? No need for it. Of course, Jay Taylor screws us again. You're going to put him in this week after the 22 carries, Jeremiah, and he's going to get like 6 and do nothing. But hey, if this is it, this might be that one spark he needs because we've talked about it all year. You can't really cut him because of that wildfire potential schedule. Is this the spark that lights that ablaze? I mean, maybe. If we're getting 20 carries against the matchups he has, let me pull this up for you, Jeremiah, just so you don't get like too upset. Yeah, have been. I get it. That was like, give me Jonathan Taylor this week. The matchup was there, sure. Tennessee 8th most points allowed. Houston 2nd most points allowed. Raiders 5th most points allowed. Houston 2nd most points allowed. It doesn't get juicier for Jonathan Taylor. If he's the guy, good Lord. Reynolds will score the first TD. I like the call, but it was not the case as far as I know. Mitchell, great to see you, brother. Mitch Chavez, my man. I had a great Sunday, not DFS-wise. Wasn't my best. I was all about the Taysom Hill, which I liked and planned out, but I was stacked him with Kamara. That was my undoing in DFS, but season long, depending on how tonight goes, I could go 3-0. I will definitely win the most important league. Smashed my most hated rival, like 150 to 80, just buried him. Loved it. Made up the points, a lot of points I'm going to need. The teams I needed to lose are in line to potentially lose. Things are looking up for my playoff hopes, baby. We'll see how tonight goes. There's definitely some action tonight for these playoff hopes, but this was everything I needed to happen so far has happened, Mitch. So I appreciate you looking out for your boy. This was a much different Monday feeling than what I had coming in last week after I got booted in the nuts by the Hail Mary, by the Chubb play, and then just getting killed on Monday Night Football. Bill Jagier updating us with everything in the household. Let's find out what's going on. We had a bunch of people asking last night what the story is for the Jagiers. Katie needs 20 from Sucker. Ooh, tonight to take the pants in the relationship. If I sang Hooked on a Thielen one more time yesterday, divorce papers may have been filed. What a great song, at least, though. I mean, yeah, Thielen really crushed it. He really, really did. Clyde at least gives her a fighting chance, though, after last night. Let's hope Suck Up goes nuts tonight. Would guess don't know what you mean, but would Gus be added to the list due to you'd think so, right? But apparently not yet. So if he is, then who will they have in their backfield? Justice Hill? I don't know. I guess that's the other guy to maybe take a note of. Need Rojo and Gronk to score less than 19 tonight for Tunes. I sure hope so. I don't want Gronk to do anything. I'm facing Gronk. I'm also facing Fournette. Let's hope none of those guys do anything. You guys shot Tunes. I mean, Rojo is crushed lately. I haven't been watching the game, so I don't know if any of those guys scored or on fire right now, but I think you get a shot, definitely. Well, the Colts make up their damn mind. Yeah, they tell us their mind. We're going to ride Nyheim Hines today. Oh, thanks for that one, Noah Pringle. Like, as soon as they tell us there's a starter that's going to see the bulk of the work, just go the other guy. Fucking sucks. Any idea if Swift's in line to play Thursday? I don't think. Oh, it is Thanksgiving. I keep fucking happy Thanksgiving, Wolfpack. By the way, that big week coming up. It's a short weekend. There's been no notes yet. No, so great question. I don't know if anybody's seen anything else. Let me know. Should I drop Judy or Lamb to pick up Aguilar? Says Katie Jagier. I don't think so. Michael Pittman would be a different story. Aguilar, I like, but Lamb had that touchdown and like is getting him back involved, and Dalton looked a lot better. I could see that offense getting a little steam down the stretch. And Judy, maybe Judy, but I kind of would like to see what happens with him. I don't know what his schedule off the top of my head looks like. Not sure who to drop for Pittman. Lazard, Mixon. Man, I hate Mixon. Maybe do the cathartic Mixon cut. Just get rid of him, Jeremiah. I'd rather have Pittman than Lazard, though, moving forward, if that makes it easier for you. Yeah. Trade Gio for Devontae Parker. Juan Ruda. Man, I really wish I knew if Fitz was going to keep playing. They said, I think, Tua is going to be back to the starting role, which is not good news for Parker. And Gio is going to be the starting running back. I think you can get more for a starting running back. Ultimately, both those guys are gross. Are you desperate for a wide receiver? Maybe you try something else, but I don't want Gio, no. You win tonight, comes the playoffs. Let's go, Tunes. Let's get that W. Let's punch that ticket, baby. First year since I've been 4 years old, I won't be giving to a Thanksgiving football. Fuck 2020. Totally. Tunes, I feel like I've maybe missed like one in the last, similar to you, like since I was a little kid. I've been going with the Pops, and I played in them like you did. Bev Salem, man, not going to be the same without that on Thanksgiving. Sucks. But at least we get real football. I mean, NFL football, right? Like, who thought we would have even been here at this point of the year? So at least we can watch that with the hope for the family and everybody stays safe. Gio for Hyde. I have Carson. Maybe it makes sense for your team, Juan. I see you want to move Gio, and I don't blame you because of just this offense is going to be horrible. You're also going to starting running back for 3 weeks. That has been really good when he gets volume. I might do it just to have my insurance, though. It doesn't. None of it moves the needle for me, though. I don't think so. Mike Clay with the essay that covers up the mouth. Potentially locked up 3 first-round buys. My brother. You've been a Wolfpack faithful, and hopefully we helped some of it, but you've always been one of the best guys back and forth to talk with. Need a lot to happen in the 4th league, but still in the hunt. Dude changed the whole landscape of the league by trading away Cook and Cup for Rob, Crowder, and AB. Oh, God, that's terrible. Mike, how did you not get in on that action? I think it's a horrible trade, and I hate when that shit happens, but it's also like, well, we could have all been involved, couldn't we have? Fuck, though. That's a brutal trade. Yeah. That's horrible. Cook and Cup. The best two players in that. Like, oh, disgusting. Is Robbie Anderson worth holding on to when it seems to favor Curtis Samuel? Could drop Anderson for Samuel, Aguilar, or Myers, says Sarah. Anderson was so good to start the year. It's like, I don't want to give up. Samuel's just so – I own Samuel. We probably have the reverse frustrations here, Sarah, in the sense of, like, I own Samuel and I never play him the right week. When I put him in, he sucks. When I bench him, he puts up 17 like he did this week. I own Samuel and I'd rather own Anderson, but maybe that's just me thinking the grass is always greener because it hasn't been that green for Robbie. You got to trust your gut there. It's justifiable. You can. I personally wouldn't. But if you want to send a message to the locker room, cut him. And out of those guys, I'd probably most want to own Myers. Who do you recommend tight end this week? I'm fucked without Taysom Hill, says Bailey Fields. Yeah, you got that cheat code for a week. Do you have any other backups, Bailey? Like, who's on your current roster? And then, as I said earlier at the pickups, Dalton Schultz, Jordan Reed if you're desperate, Jordan Akins. It's gross. I think Will Dissly is also a very interesting. I wouldn't want to use him, but I'd like to stash him right now and see if he can regain that rapport with Russell Wilson. Mike Davis, Carson, Gio, Eckler, Hopkins, Lockett. Should I trade Eckler for Keenan? I'd do that if you can get the value because Eckler, yeah, he's a monster when he's in. But Keenan, 19 targets and 16 catches. Like, what we know Keenan's a monster. We think Eckler should be a monster when he gets back. If he's healthy, he will be a monster when he gets back. But I look at those running backs, Swan, and I'm like, I don't know if you can stand to lose Eckler either. If C-Mac's back, Davis is going to be nothing. Carson's a solid play. Gio's, you got good receivers. I like it, though. I like Keenan. Keenan's just so locked in. I would probably do that deal, yes. All right, Wolfpack, I'm going to go watch some Monday Night Football. I'm going to be updating my rest of season big board while the action's happening. So best of luck, whatever you need tonight to get that W. Lock it on in. Get it on in. Hope you win. I'll be back tomorrow with the Week 11 rankings show. So make sure you tune on into that. Get caught up. I will say answer for Jackie Cow. I would say I'd rather have Gallman than probably either of those guys moving forward. I'd rather have Dobbins too because I think stretch run he could be a beast. So yes, for that answer, that question, yes, you could drop either of those guys for Gallman. I'd probably drop Balaj first though. But yeah, thank you so much, Wolfpack. If you want to support the show, subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, turn on the notification so you know when we're live, and then a review to the podcast. If you give us 5 stars, even if you don't listen on podcasts, that helps us out so much more too. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, spending your Monday with me. Let's get what you need for Monday Night Football and check back in for your ranking show tomorrow right around 5:30 Eastern time. Wolfpack, I'll see you later.